You felt it before, even if you've never had the words for it. You walk into an old building, maybe an empty church, a basement, a dim hallway in a house that stood for 100 years. And before anyone says a word, before anything actually happens, something in you changes. The hair on your arms lift, your chest tightens. You feel cold, even if the room is warm. And there's this creeping, undeniable sense that you are not alone, that something is here, that you're being watched. Maybe you even catch it a gray shape, sliding across the very edge of your vision. But when you turn to look, there's nothing there. For thousands of years, humans have had one explanation for this feeling: ghosts. But in 1998, a scientist accidentally discovered the real reason. And it's genuinely stranger than any ghost story, because it turns out there's a sound that can do all of this to you. A sound that makes you afraid, makes you cold, makes you see shapes that aren't there, and you cannot hear it. Our story starts in a research laboratory in Coventry, England, in the late 1990s. The lab had a reputation. The people who worked there, working late into the night, surrounded by medical equipment, would talk quietly about how the place felt. Wrong. Uneasy. Some of them said they'd seen things, grey figures, shadows, a presence in the room. A few were genuinely frightened to be there alone after dark. One of the engineers who worked there was a man named Vic Tandy, and Vic was a skeptic. He didn't believe in ghosts. He figured the creepy feeling was just the product of a dark, windowless lab full of humming machines and overworked, tired people. A spooky atmosphere, nothing more. And then one night, it happened to him. Tandy was working alone, late, and he began to feel deeply, profoundly uneasy. He broke out in a cold sweat. The feeling of dread grew heavier and heavier. And then, out of the corner of his eye, he saw a grey, indistinct shape looming at the edge of his vision. A figure. It was there. He was sure of it. His heart pounding. He forced himself to turn and face it directly, and it was gone. Nothing there at all. Now, most people in that moment would conclude they'd just seen a ghost. But Vic Tandy was about to stumble onto something that would rewrite the entire experience, and he'd do it completely by accident the very next day. Because Vic Tandy had a hobby. He was a competitive fencer, and that hobby was about to hand him the answer. The next day, Tandy brought one of his fencing swords into the lab. He needed to do some work on it, so he clamped the blade into a vise on his workbench and stepped away. And when he came back, something was happening that made no sense. The free end of the sword blade was vibrating violently, wobbling back and forth on its own, with no one touching it, as if some invisible hand had plucked it like a guitar string. Now, for a normal person, a sword mysteriously vibrating in a haunted lab might be the final straw, proof the place really was possessed. But for an engineer like Tandy, it was the opposite. It was a clue, a physical, measurable clue, because Tandy knew what makes something vibrate on its own, like that. It's a phenomenon called resonance. Every object has a natural frequency it likes to vibrate at, and if you hit it with a sound wave or vibration at exactly that frequency, it will start to shake even if you can't see or hear what's pushing it. It's the same principle that lets an opera singer shatter a wine glass by hitting exactly the right note. So Tandy realized something in that room was producing an invisible wave of energy, a vibration strong enough to shake a steel blade, but one he couldn't hear. He grabbed measuring equipment and went hunting for it, and he found it. A powerful wave of sound bouncing between the walls of the lab, building into what's called a standing wave, with its point of maximum intensity right in the center of the room, right where he'd been sitting when the ghost appeared. He measured its frequency. It was about 19 hertz. And then he traced it to its source. It wasn't a spirit. It wasn't a portal to the other side. It was a newly installed extractor fan. He turned the fan off. The wave vanished, and so did the ghost. So why does 19 hertz matter so much? Why that specific number? To understand, you need to know one thing about human hearing. Our ears can typically detect sounds down to about 20 hertz. Anything below that 19, 18, 17 hertz and down is called infrasound. It's still a real physical sound wave moving through the air, carrying energy. Your ears just can't consciously register it. It's below the floor of your hearing. But here's the crucial part. Just because you can't hear it doesn't mean your body doesn't respond to it. And at around 18 to 19 hertz, infrasound does something genuinely eerie, because it turns out that 19 hertz is very close to the resonant frequency of the human eyeball. Remember resonance? The thing that shook the sword? The same thing can happen to your eyes. When you're exposed to infrasound at this frequency, your eyeballs can begin to physically vibrate in their socket, just slightly, just enough. And when your eyes vibrate, your vision smears. Your brain starts receiving distorted signals, especially in your peripheral vision, the edges, where your sight is already fuzzy and motion sensitive. The result? You perceive faint, gray, indistinct shapes, movement that isn't there, a figure hovering at the corner of your eye. But the moment you turn to look at it directly, using the sharp central part of your vision, the the illusion collapses. There's nothing there. That is almost certainly exactly what Vic Tandy saw. Not a ghost. His own vibrating eyeballs painting a phantom at the edge of his sight. And it's not just your eyes. Your whole body has resonant frequencies in this same low range. Infrasound at high enough intensity can cause feelings of anxiety, a racing heart, difficulty breathing, chills, and a crushing sense of unease and dread, all without you ever hearing a sound. Cold sweat, a pounding heart, a sense of being watched, a grey figure at the edge of your vision. Every single symptom of a classic haunting, produced by a fan. But this raises a much deeper question, a far more interesting one. Why? Why would a sound you can't even hear flood your body with fear? Why are we wired to panic at a silent vibration? This isn't a glitch. This is ancient survival machinery doing exactly what it evolved to do. Think about what produces infrasound in the natural world. Not fans and plumbing, those are new. In the world our ancestors evolved in, low frequency, powerful, rumbling vibration came from a very specific list of things. Severe weather, violent storms, earthquakes, avalanche, rushing water and waterfall, large, powerful animals moving nearby. In other words, infrasound was the signature of enormous, dangerous, natural forces, the kind of things that could kill you. And an early human whose body reacted to that deep, invisible rumble with a jolt of fear and a powerful urge to leave that human was more likely to survive, to get away from the collapsing hillside, the coming storm, the thing in the dark, before their conscious mind even understood why. And here's a genuinely chilling detail. Some large predators appear to use this. The roar of a tiger contains powerful infrasound, down around 18 Hz, the same range. Researchers believe this infrasonic component may help stun and paralyze prey with a jolt of pure, instinctive fear, a fraction of a second before the attack. A weapon made of a sound you can't consciously hear. So the dread you feel in that old, creaking building, it's not weakness, it's not superstition, it's a survival alarm hundreds of thousands of years old, going off exactly as designed, just triggered by the wrong thing, by a rattling pipe, a gust of wind across a chimney, an old ventilation system humming at a frequency your body has been taught by evolution to be terrified of. Your ancient brain hears danger. It just can't tell you that the danger is a fan. Now, I want to be honest with you because that's what we do here. Infrasound is a real, measurable, scientifically documented phenomenon. Vic Tandy's discovery has been studied and cited for over 2 decades. Researchers have gone into other reputedly haunted locations and found unusually strong low-frequency sound. There are NASA reports going back to the 1970s documenting how the human eye and body resonate and react in this frequency range. This is solid, but it would be just as unscientific to now swing to the other extreme and claim that infrasound explains every strange feeling anyone has ever had in an old building. It doesn't, and careful scientists don't claim that it does. Old buildings are creepy for lots of overlapping reasons. They're often dark, and our brains are primed to fear the dark, where our ancestors couldn't see threats. They creak and groan as old timber and pipes shift, and our threat detection system latches onto every unexplained noise. They're full of shadows and vague shapes that our over-eager, pattern-hunting brains happily turn into faces and figures. And if you already believe a place is haunted, your mind is exquisitely primed to interpret every ambiguous sensation as proof. Infrasound is one powerful, real, physical piece of the puzzle. It is almost certainly behind a genuine chunk of haunting experiences, especially the specific ones, the grey shapes, the dread with no source, feeling concentrated in one spot in a room. But it's not the whole story. The creepy feeling in old buildings is really a collision of many things. Physics, biology, evolution, and psychology all stacking on top of each other in exactly the wrong place. The point isn't that the feeling is fake. The feeling is completely real. It's just that the cause probably isn't on the other side of the veil. It's in the walls, the wiring, and the ancient wiring inside your own head. So why do old buildings feel creepy? Not because they're full of the dead, but because they're full of things that quietly push on the oldest, deepest parts of your nervous system. Darkness. Your brain is trained to fear. Noises your mind can't quite place. And sometimes a low, invisible rumble infrasound vibrating your very eyes, flooding you with a dread designed hundreds of thousands of years ago to save your life. Vic Tandy walked into a haunted lab, saw a ghost, and instead of running, he asked a better question. He asked why. And the answer he found was, in a way, far more amazing than a spirit. The idea that the air itself can carry a silent frequency of fear. So the next time you step into some old, still place, and you feel that cold prickle on the back of your neck, that unmistakable sense that you are not alone, don't be so quick to call it a ghost. Stop and listen to the silence, because something might genuinely be there with you, filling the room, touching your body, whispering danger to your oldest instinct. You just can't hear it.